there have been significant developments in the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells in Mississippi and the investigation into it.
Two videos. Same boat, 3 hours apart. That is not supposed to be a mystery. A boat exists in one place at one time. Its timestamp should simply confirm what everyone already assumes when the footage was shot in the order it actually happened. Instead, two separate people, filming what appears to be the exact same vessel on Horn Island, have produced two recordings whose metadata does not agree with each other, and somewhere inside that 3-hour gap sits the last possible image anyone has of Nolan Wells. Subscribe, hit that bell. The first video reached investigators the ordinary way, not through a viral post, not through a news outlet's exclusive, but through a stranger who watched it, felt something was wrong, and drove it to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office themselves. In an investigation that has already produced federal subpoenas, fabricated toxicology reports, and an ecosystem of viral speculation feeding on genuine public grief, a single person choosing the slower, quieter, more accountable path, bringing physical footage directly to a detective rather than posting it for likes and shares, stands out precisely because it is the exception to how most evidence has surfaced in this case. TMZ later obtained that same footage. According to the outlet's reporting, the video pans across a crowded scene, boats, partygoers, the sprawling 4th of July gathering that turned Horn Island into one of the most trafficked pieces of shoreline on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that day. The camera settles briefly on a young black man standing on the back deck of a boat, bending down for a drink. His face is never visible, but TMZ noted something specific. The swim trunks he is wearing appear to match, in color, the trunks Nolan Wells was photographed wearing earlier that same day, in the now widely circulated image taken with his friends before the group ever reached the island. That kind of visual matching, clothing color, general build, context of location, is exactly the type of identification that true crime investigations have relied on for decades before DNA and digital forensics became standard tools, and it remains genuinely useful even now, precisely because it can narrow a search before more definitive confirmation arrives. It is also, by its nature, imperfect. Swim trunks in a common color are not a fingerprint. The boat is anchored in neck-deep water. A couple of older adults are visible aboard, along with several other people nearby. According to TMZ, the metadata attached to this recording timestamps it at 2:23 p.m. The person who filmed it believed strongly enough that the man could be Nolan Wells that they brought the footage directly to a detective assigned to the case. If that identification holds, this video represents the last known image of Nolan Wells alive. For weeks, that was the entire story. A single unconfirmed video. A specific time, 2:23 p.m. A specific gap, roughly 2 hours before the boat carrying Nolan's friends departed the island around 4:30 p.m., according to GPS data, returning to the mainland without him. No witness has publicly come forward reporting a sighting of Nolan Wells after that 4:30 p.m. departure. That timeline, last possible sighting at 2:23, departure without him at 4:30, has anchored much of the public understanding of Nolan's final hours since this video first surfaced in late July. Then, in early August, a second video entered the picture, and the timeline that had seemed settled stopped adding up. The second video was not obtained through a police delivery or an exclusive TMZ acquisition. It was posted publicly, on Instagram, by someone who said they had captured it on Horn Island on July 4th. According to reporting on the clip, near the end of the footage, a boat becomes clearly visible, one bearing the name Mac Daddy, painted or marked on its hull. That name matters because reporters comparing the two videos noted the vessel appeared to match the boat visible in TMZ's earlier footage, the same boat where the man in matching swim trunks had been recorded at 2:23 p.m. If that match is accurate, both videos are showing the same physical vessel, on the same body of water, on the same day. They should, in theory, simply be two different camera angles capturing overlapping or sequential moments of the same afternoon. Instead, the person who posted the newer video stated they captured it at 11:17 a.m., before the area became crowded, according to their own description. 11:17 in the morning, not 2:23 in the afternoon. A gap of just over 3 hours between two recordings that appear to show the identical boat. 3 hours is not a small discrepancy. It is not the kind of margin that can be explained away by a phone clock running a few minutes fast, or a metadata field reflecting when a file was saved rather than when it was actually recorded. though both of those technical possibilities remain worth investigating before anyone draws a firm conclusion from the gap itself. 3 hours is long enough to represent an entirely different chapter of that day. If the Mac Daddy was on Horn Island as early as 11:17 a.m., nearly matching the roughly 11:14 a.m. GPS timestamp for when Nolan's own boat first reached the island that morning, and then again in what may be the same location with a similar scene, at 2:23 p.m., the boat itself may have simply remained anchored in that same general area for several hours, consistent with a group spending the day at a single, popular gathering spot rather than moving around the island extensively. That is one plausible, mundane explanation. Boats anchor. People come and go from the same general area over the course of an entire holiday afternoon. A boat visible at 11:17 a.m. and again at 2:23 p.m. in roughly the same stretch of water does not necessarily represent two contradictory accounts of the same single moment. It may simply represent two different moments, hours apart, both captured on camera by different bystanders who happen to be nearby. But that explanation, however reasonable, does not fully resolve the deeper question this timestamp gap raises. If the boat was anchored in that same location from at least 11:17 a.m. through 2:23 p.m., more than 3 hours, then the window during which the man in matching swim trunks could have boarded, remained, or left that vessel expands considerably beyond what a single 2:23 p.m. snapshot initially suggested. The original video offered what looked like a precise data point, a specific minute when a person who might be Nolan Wells was visible on a specific boat. The second video complicates that precision by establishing the same boat was present, in the same general area, for a window of time nearly 3 times longer than previously understood. That does not mean the man seen at 2:23 p.m. was necessarily on that boat the entire time. It does mean investigators examining this footage now have to consider a broader window of possible activity around that vessel. Not a single isolated moment, but a multi-hour presence that any full timeline reconstruction will need to account for. Neither video has been officially confirmed by investigators as depicting Nolan Wells or as definitively connected to his case. A law enforcement source confirmed to TMZ that investigators are aware of the first clip, but officials have not publicly verified the identification of the man in it, nor have they confirmed that the boat in the second video is in fact the same vessel, only that reporters and members of the public examining both clips have noted the visual similarity. That distinction matters enormously for how seriously this timestamp discrepancy should currently be weighted. Two members of the public independently believed they had captured something relevant enough to share, one bringing footage directly to a detective, one posting publicly to social media. Neither is a trained forensic video analyst. Neither had access to the other's footage at the time they captured or shared their own. The Mac Daddy identification itself, and the visual comparison between the two clips, has so far come from reporters and online observers doing their own side-by-side analysis, not from an official forensic video comparison conducted by investigators with access to the original, unprocessed files and their complete metadata. That gap between citizen-driven analysis and official forensic confirmation is where this story currently sits, and it is worth being precise about what that actually means. Metadata on a video file can be affected by numerous technical factors, the specific device used to record it, whether that device's internal clock was accurately set, whether the file was edited, compressed, or re-uploaded through a platform that strips or alters metadata before display, and how the specific app or camera software the person used logs its timestamps. Smartphone cameras typically embed a creation timestamp directly into a video file's metadata at the moment of recording, based on the device's internal clock and time zone settings. That embedded timestamp is generally reliable, assuming the device's clock was correctly set, which is the default behavior for most modern smartphones connected to a cellular or Wi-Fi network, since those devices typically sync their clocks automatically against network time servers. But once a video is uploaded to a social media platform, shared through a messaging app, or forwarded multiple times before eventually reaching TMZ or a law enforcement detective, that original embedded metadata can be altered, stripped entirely, or replaced with a new timestamp reflecting when the file was most recently saved or uploaded, not when it was actually filmed. Instagram, in particular, has documented practices of stripping or modifying certain metadata fields during the upload and compression process, meaning a timestamp displayed or reported for a video posted to that platform may not perfectly reflect the original recording metadata embedded by the device itself. Two videos from two different phones, two different owners, two different recording and sharing platforms do not automatically carry perfectly synchronized, internally consistent metadata, even when both are showing something that happened on the same real-world afternoon. That is precisely the kind of forensic detail investigators, working with the original files rather than publicly shared and potentially recompressed versions, would need to examine before drawing any conclusion about what this 3-hour gap actually represents. It could reflect a genuine 3-hour window during which the Mac Daddy remained anchored in the same general area. It could reflect a technical metadata discrepancy between two different recording devices and platforms that has nothing to do with the actual sequence of events. It could, in a less likely but not impossible scenario, indicate the two videos are not actually showing the same boat at all, a visual resemblance that reporters and online observers identified, but that a closer forensic comparison might ultimately rule out. 6 weeks into this investigation, the public record includes GPS data for the boat carrying Nolan's own friend group, towing company audio capturing a mechanical emergency and a request for help, at least 2 separate pieces of bystander video potentially showing a boat connected to his final hours, witness accounts describing his decision to remain on the island, a competing account from an independent witness suggesting he intended to leave, and now, a timestamp discrepancy between 2 pieces of citizen-captured footage that nobody has yet fully reconciled. That is an unusually rich body of circumstantial, technical, and testimonial evidence for a case where the central forensic conclusion, cause and manner of death, remains officially undetermined, rich in volume, not yet rich in resolution. Cases with genuinely thin evidentiary records tend to stall for a different reason. Investigators simply do not have enough raw material to work with, and the trail eventually goes cold from lack of leads rather than an excess of unreconciled ones. That is not what has happened here. If anything, this case suffers from an unusual abundance of partial, unofficial, citizen-generated evidence, video clips, audio recordings, social media posts, secondhand accounts, arriving faster than any single investigative team can formally verify, cross-reference, and incorporate into a coherent official timeline. Every new piece of video, every new timestamp, every new witness account adds another thread to a timeline that investigators, the family's independent forensic team, and now a Mississippi grand jury will eventually have to weave into something coherent enough to support, or fail to support, formal charges. The sheer volume of that material is itself both an asset and a burden. An asset because it means the raw information needed to eventually reconstruct July 4th likely already exists somewhere in this collection of footage and testimony, and a burden because sorting genuine signal from coincidental noise, technical error, and outright fabrication requires exactly the kind of slow, methodical forensic work that a public demanding faster answers has struggled to accept. Dr. Benjamin Hudson, father of Warren Hudson, one of the 3 friends who traveled with Nolan Wells to Horn Island, announced his own $50,000 reward for information, urging anyone with knowledge of what happened to come forward. That pledge adds to a reward structure that has grown substantially since Nolan's death first became national news. Contributions from Reverend Al Sharpton, filmmaker Tyler Perry, and NFL Hall of Famer Terrell Owens have already pushed the combined public reward figure into 6 figures, and Hudson's announcement extends that same impulse into the friend group's own immediate families. Family members offering their own money is a distinct category of reward from a civil rights organization, or a celebrity donor stepping in from outside the case. A father whose own son has faced sustained public scrutiny over his account of July 4th choosing to add his own reward money to the pool of incentives aimed at producing new information is not a neutral act. It is, at minimum, a public signal that Warren Hudson's own family wants this case resolved as urgently as anyone else connected to it, rather than quietly hoping public attention simply fades. The video discrepancy adds a new, specific task to whatever comes next in this investigation. A forensic reconciliation of 2 pieces of citizen-captured footage that on their face cannot both be accurately timestamped if they are genuinely showing the same boat at the same general location. That reconciliation is exactly the kind of technical work law enforcement digital forensics units are equipped to perform, examining original file metadata rather than publicly shared, potentially recompressed copies, cross-referencing device information, and determining whether the Mac Daddy sighting at 11:17 a.m. and the swim trunk sighting at 2:23 p.m. represent the same extended presence, 2 coincidentally similar boats, or a metadata error that has nothing to do with the actual sequence of events on Horn Island that day. Until that forensic work is completed and its results made public, likely, like everything else in this case, only after the grand jury process concludes, both videos remain exactly what they currently are. Genuinely interesting, publicly unverified pieces of a puzzle that continues to grow more complex with each new piece of footage that surfaces. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He arrived on Horn Island around 11:14 a.m. on July 4th, according to GPS data from his friend group's boat. Sometime in the hours that followed, according to now two separate pieces of citizen video, a boat matching the same description was visible on the water, once at 11:17 a.m., once at 2:23 p.m. Whether those two moments represent one continuous presence or two separate unconnected sightings remains, as of this week, unresolved. His friend's boat departed the island around 4:30 p.m. without him. His body was recovered from the Horn Island shoreline on July 6th. Between that morning arrival and that evening departure sits a stretch of hours this case has been trying to fully reconstruct for 6 weeks, a reconstruction that two new pieces of video evidence have made simultaneously more informative and more confusing at the exact same time. Every case like this one eventually reaches a point where the sheer volume of partial evidence has to be handed over to people with the authority and the tools to actually reconcile it. Not reporters comparing screenshots, not online observers noting visual similarities, but forensic analysts with access to original files, complete metadata, and the legal standing to compel further cooperation from anyone still holding relevant footage. That point has not yet arrived publicly in this case. What has arrived is one more reminder that 6 weeks after Nolan Wells disappeared, the raw material needed to understand what happened to him keeps surfacing, even as the process required to actually make sense of it moves at a pace far slower than the internet's appetite for answers. If you have any real information about what happened to Nolan Wells on Horn Island, including any photos or video from that day, however insignificant it may seem, contact investigators directly, tips.fbi.gov or 1-800-CAL-FBI. The combined reward now exceeds $125,000, with Dr. Benjamin Hudson's additional $50,000 pledge adding further incentive for anyone still holding back. Subscribe, hit that bell. 2 videos, 1 boat, or maybe 2, 3 hours that do not yet make sense. Somewhere in Mississippi tonight, whoever filmed either of these clips knows more than any published article, any TMZ report, any online comparison thread can currently confirm. Whether they realize it or not, they may be holding the single piece of context that finally makes these two timestamps agree with each other. And somewhere inside that gap, the last confirmed sighting of Nolan Wells, if that is even who the camera actually caught, is still waiting for someone to explain exactly when it happened and what it means.